So the director of Airplane came out and he had a few things to say, basically saying like films like Airplane could only be made today without the jokes. And it's like that's like the one thing we're missing at the moment. When you're talking about like comedy films, when was the last like good comedy film? And like specifically comedy films that take risks. Not even risks, just funny stuff. It's like most people look at sort of Tropic Thunder being the last like film like that, like pure comedy film. And that's just gone now because you're not allowed to do this and you're not allowed to do that. There's all these rules just restricting what is funny. It's like you get TV shows and that are, but when you're talking about films, there's not that much out there. You haven't got like your films like Step Brothers and stuff like that. Actually funny shit that still makes you laugh to this day. So that's like one thing that seems to be missing at the moment. But let's get into it and see what he had to say anyway. Director David Zucker, known for his work on comedies like the Naked Gun series and Basketball, recently slammed cancel culture by asserting that his cult classic Airplane could be made in this day and age just without the jokes. And I would definitely recommend Airplane and the Naked Gun trilogy. And it's not even like in these, it's not like there's any really like offense. You wouldn't really call it like, you wouldn't think people would get offended by it, but obviously we've got people like that just get offended by everything. Last year marked the 40th anniversary of the release of Airplane, the comedy I wrote and directed with my brother Jerry and our friends Jim Abrams, wrote Zucker in a column for Commentary. Just before the world shut down, Paramount held a screening at the Egyptian Theatre in Hollywood, followed by a Q&A in which an audience member asked a question we never used to receive. Could you make Airplane today? My response, of course we could, just without the jokes. But that's where I'm like, you can still make films like this. It's just that all these film studios, they haven't got any balls. They've lost their balls. So you could absolutely make films like it. It's just no one's willing to for whatever reason. It's really strange. It's like you can still do it. Just do it. According to Zucker, Paramount actually planned to withhold the re-release of Airplane because of the backlash the cult classic comedy could have gotten on account of its content, a lot of which could have been deemed insensitive for today's standards. For people that don't understand like what comedy is, for some reason I don't know if someone just ain't taught them what it is. So he says, although people tell me that they love Airplane and it seems to be included on just about every top 5 movie comedy list, there was talk at Paramount of withholding the re-release over feared backlash for scenes that today would be deemed insensitive. Now, the ones he's going to talk about, they're not even necessarily offensive. He added, I'm referring to the scenes like the one in which 2 black characters speak entirely in a jive dialect so unintelligible that it has to be subtitled. I've lost count of the number of people who have said to me, you couldn't do that scene today, but I always wondered why not. Half the gags in that joke were aimed at white people, given that the translation for shit is golly, and the whole gag is topped off by the whitest lady on the planet, the actress who played the mum on Leave It to Beaver, translating. The director also mentioned that this particular scene was even-handed because we made fun of both points of view, asserting that no one ended up being offended by that scene and all audiences loved it. They still do. But in today's market, if I pitched a studio executive a comedy in which a white lady has to translate the speech of black people, in which an 8-year-old girl says, I like my coffee black like my men, or an airline pilot makes suggestions to a little boy, touching on the effects that cancel culture has had in our society, the Airplane director then opined that we're faced with social and political pressures that are tearing our country and our families apart. Not that I couldn't do without some family members anyway. But the point is we live in the most outrageous period in our recent history, when the need for humour is greatest, and yet we seem to be losing our ability to laugh at ourselves and our world. And you've got an entire thing at the moment that is ripe for the taking. When you're looking at these sort of SJW sort of woke type, when you're looking at these people, there's loads and loads of stuff to make a mockery of. And that's what you need. You just need people to. They just need to just make films like that. Just keep doing it and keep. Eventually, these little whiners they're gonna disappear. But they at the moment, these studios and what just aren't willing to do it. I mean, if you actually try and think of any like funny comedies in the past 5 years, I can't think of anything. There might have been the odd one in there, but not enough. I can't remember anything. But he continues and he says, humour happens when you go against what's expected and surprise people with something they're not anticipating, like the New York Jets winning a game. But to find this surprise funny, people have to be willing to suppress the literal interpretations of jokes. Providing a fairly compelling point as to why humour shouldn't be taken seriously, Zucker brings up Lloyd Bridges' character in Airplane, who is seen throughout the film unsuccessfully battling his addictions for comedic effect. In Airplane, Lloyd Bridges' character tries to quit smoking, drinking amphetamines, and sniffing glue. If his addictions were to be taken literally, there would be no laughs, the director has explained, before concluding many of today's studio executives seem to believe that audiences can no longer look past the literal interpretations of jokes. Fear of backlash rather than the desire to entertain seems to be driving their choices. And that's what a lot of it comes down to. They're petrified. And it's like, well, see if you just ignored them. There's nothing they can do to you. But it's so ingrained in some of these people that they can't see any way of how they could make comedies like this. And like I said, Airplane isn't even that like. It's not. I wouldn't really call it edgy. But this is just because people don't understand jokes and can't take jokes, they ruin it for everybody else. Rather than them just not watching it. Now, they've got to come in and they've got to ruin it for the rest of us. Because people like that are just miserable. And as I've said and other people have said, misery loves company. So that's why they don't want to see anyone else having a good time. It upsets them. But he continues and says, there is a very vocal, though I believe small percentage of the population that can't differentiate between glue-sniffing jokes and glue-sniffing drug problem. Yeah, that's the thing. You tell a joke and they think, they mean it. They mean it. It's like really insane. Just how they sort of go that way. Zucker believes that this vocal minority that gets easily offended by inoffensive jokes are the people whom studio executives fear when they think twice about re-releasing Airplane on its 40th anniversary, when they put disclaimers in front of Blazing Saddles. That's another great comedy, and that is like a really like edgy one. And that's absolutely hilarious. But again, people don't get it. They just don't seem to like understand what's going on. Or when they pressure writers to remove jokes that are otherwise perfectly offensive. Some people look at the mass exodus of comedy writers and proclaim that comedy must be dead. That's not true. Comedy is not dead, it's scared. So, like I said, you can still do all this stuff. It's just, for some reason, people are scared. You're scared of a minority of people, which is embarrassing. It should be embarrassing for these studio executives and people like that. Like I said, this is the one thing we're missing at the moment. When you're talking about comedy films, there's nothing. What's coming out? I mean, you can go Kevin Hart movie, but they're funny, but they're not funny, are they? They're very tame. It's like they sort of employ the jokes we've already seen this. They're just not willing to take risks and just say, you know what, fuck those people. Let's make people laugh. Let's entertain people. And when something is scared, it goes into hiding, adding that he admires those comedy writers who can pour their creativity and talents into non-humorous projects. But yeah, just because of this fear going about, it's just that's what the problem is with what's like in the world now. Nobody can take it. Well, I say nobody, I mean like a small portion. But that's who they're pandering to. It's really hilarious. See if they just did it and ignored those people. They'd have more support in the first place. It's like, just ignore those people. They're never going to like it. They're never going to accept it. So to step round them is just pointless. They just need to get back their balls and just do it. Because I really would like to see some great comedy films. At the moment, you've just got to dive into the past. Just look at films like this, and Naked Gun, and Blazing Saddles. There's still a lot to choose from. I mean, we're almost up to like 100 years of TV, so we've got plenty of stuff to look at. But we should still be getting films like this anyway. But now, people that want to suck the soul out of everything ruin it for everybody. But I do think Tropic Thunder was sort of the last one. I think that there has been some after that, but that's sort of like the big one that people point to. I mean, you've got Robert Downey Jr. doing what he's doing, then you've got like Simple Jack. How are people not finding this funny? Well, no, it just seems to be just boredom after boredom. They do comedy films, but there's not nothing really. But hopefully comedy films come back, because it is shit that's not what we're getting. But I definitely recommend this and the Naked Trilogy and all. But that's all I got to say on that anyway. So if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.